Looks like ESPN's doing position preview rankings for the 2024 season ahead of spring ball. Quarterbacks is all that I've seen that's released so far. I think Dean made a video talking about this, but I want to talk about how they have Carson Beck ranked at number 1. I want to talk about the rest of the list, and are we getting ahead of ourselves with Carson Beck? I want to look at both sides of the coin. Let's have an open and honest conversation. I do think Carson Beck is probably the best quarterback in college football. He's definitely up there heading into next season. I think that I have some opinions on Carson Beck. I've got opinions on the rest of this top 10, though. As you guys know, I like to look at these lists. I like to debunk them. I like to reorder things. And there's just some names, I don't know. And maybe this is not a good quarterback year, is kind of what I'm realizing looking into it. I mean, we're going into a year where there are some legit guys from the last couple of years headed off to the NFL. And the year before that, too, just if you think about the last 3 years of college football and you think about all the quarterbacks that left, it doesn't feel like this group of quarterbacks is as strong. Is that a knock? Saying that Carson Beck is the leader heading into 2024? Is that a knock? I made a video talking about how Carson Beck was the front runner to win the Heisman. Now, I don't know how realistic that is either. And I do think Carson Beck is a really, really, really good quarterback. It's gonna sound like I'm hating. It's not what it is. This is all that we've talked about with Carson is positivity, and that's what this video is essentially going to be, a positive video about Carson. But I want us to be honest with ourselves. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post here, talking about Carson Beck, talking about ESPN's list, talking about the quarterbacks in 2024 for college football. The newsletter is below. If you want me to make lists, I can make that, and we can push that out on the newsletter on dogpost.com. But when I'm at lunch or I'm at out doing something, there's just this ounce of excitement when I get a notification on my phone. It's breaking. And this happens, right? Well, you get an extra one, and you get the Dawg Post one, right? If you sign up for the Dawg Post newsletter, and you got notifications set up on your email on your phone, that I'm not going to help you out with. You're going to have to go into your settings, talk to Apple or Android or whoever it is, but make sure you're checking out our Dawg Post newsletter. The excitement of getting a notification, right? Breaking news: Georgia just went undefeated. That's something you can get out of our Dawg Post newsletter. Thank you for hearing me out on that. So this list references Carson Beck's 14 starts under his belt, references a lot about Georgia's offense last year, what he did as his first year as a starter. Super impressive. I've been on the Carson Beck train for a while now in terms of just being a believer that he could be a really good college quarterback. Here's my thought on Carson Beck. I think he could have been an NFL first rounder this past year. Well, he'd be 22-ish. 23, I think he's 22. Heading into this draft, J.J. McCarthy is being projected as a first rounder, guys. I really don't see it, and it's not personal. It's not a personal thing against J.J. McCarthy, but we're living in a world where that guy might be a top 5 pick, and you're gonna sit here over guys like Michael Penix Jr. There's a certain point where the 2-year age thing or the injury history, I think it doesn't come to an account. But we're in a world where J.J. McCarthy has risen up draft boards. Michael Penix Jr. has fought his way back into being the first round. People have flirted with the idea of Bo Nix being a first rounder. I'm telling you right now, Carson Beck would have been a first round pick or second at worst in this draft, because I think he would have interviewed pretty well. I think that he would have just been good at the combine. He would have had to test out, right? Doesn't have as much tape with 14 starts. You look at what he has around him at Georgia. It's the same knock that Stetson Bennett had. But Carson Beck's not getting that treatment that Stetson Bennett got, even though he was a productive starter at Georgia. And people thought it was a joke that he was a Heisman finalist and this and that. And, he's just being carried. Well, is it that Carson is just really, really good and that he has to carry Georgia now? Instead, I don't like the inconsistency from national people. I don't. Everyone thought it was ridiculous that Stetson returned in 2022 too, and was doing what he was doing. But with Carson, and I get it, he's 6'4", 6'5", he's got the NFL arm. I get all that. Stetson should have got a little bit better of a treatment, and that's not what I mean. So the rest of this list, because it's got Carson at 1, it's got Dillon Gabriel at 2. So let's talk about the 3 SEC guys in the top 5 that they have. Because Texas is in the SEC. So they've got Quinn Ewers at 3, Jalen Milroe at 4. Georgia's going to have to face those 2 teams and those 2 quarterbacks. Well, is Jalen Milroe, if Jalen Milroe is a top 5 quarterback, then it is a weak year for quarterbacks. I think Jalen Milroe is a dynamic playmaker on offense. I think that he had good games against some really good teams, but he is not as good as some of the other guys on this list. He's not better than Quinn Ewers, who is ranked ahead of him, but is he better than Jackson Dart? Is he better than Noah Fafita? I think Noah Fafita is pretty good. I'm not completely understanding the Noah Fafita hype. I would rather have Shedeur Sanders than Jalen Milroe. That's just my opinion. Is Jalen Milroe one of the 10 best? That's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with you saying that. Shedeur Sanders is another guy I think that's really good. Back to Carson though. He's got the Heisman hype along with Ewers and guys like that towards the top. He's going to have to do more this year is kind of the argument, right? You're losing out on a Bowers and a McConkey and a Kendall Milton and Dejan Edwards. What do you have with ETN? Are Georgia's weapons as good on the outside now? I think they'll be fine. I think obviously losing Bowers and Ladd and Marcus Rosner-Jack Saint makes it harder, but these guys, Georgia's still stacked. I think Dylan Bell is really good. I think Trevor Etienne's really good. I think that no one's really talking about Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas. So Carson can prove all of these people right. Another guy, Barstool's Brandon Walker, he comes out with his list. He's got Carson Beck at 1. It's just different. It's a different feeling, I guess, seeing a Georgia quarterback be ranked so highly. And I think that he could have. Georgia's going to get into a situation where it might play like 16 games. Is 17 games possible? You could play 15. You play, I think 16 or 17 is where you can cap it out in college football this year, just because of the extra games. You can end up playing 17 games. That's possible in college football now. So that's on the table. Georgia could be in a situation where he plays 15, 16, 17 games, and he obliterates the passing records. What did Beck do last year? The 3,900 yards. He was consistent with the yards. 24 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, right? So there you go. The problem is those aren't Heisman numbers. Is anyone else going to put up a Heisman-type season? Is Dillon Gabriel in an Oregon offense, who ESPN has ranked at number 2, the type of guy that puts up a bigger Heisman season? I think that he's definitely going to be towards the tops of those lists. Why is Carson Beck ranked ahead of the other guys? Right? I probably failed you by getting so far into this and not talking about that. But why is he? How clean he was in just 14 starts. Dillon Gabriel's gone through a lot, transferring around, going through injuries, and now he transfers to Oregon. I'm not a big fan of first year in the program, it being your best year, right? Last year, Michael Penix Jr., that was not his first year with Washington. Bo Nix, that wasn't his first year with Oregon. Their Heisman finalist. Jaden Daniels, that wasn't his first year with LSU. He wins the Heisman. They were all transfer quarterbacks. And I think transfer quarterbacks can be really good. I think an older transfer quarterback like Dillon Gabriel can obviously be really good. I do think that the lack of consistency will ultimately, and just a change of scenery, will ultimately probably have Carson Beck looking a little bit better than him. He gets to gel with a coordinator now. The head-to-head that kind of gets thrown around is Ewers versus Beck. Ewers versus Beck. Here's my opinion on that. Quinn Ewers has more arm talent than Carson Beck. I think he's got a more impressive arm. Carson is more consistent. I think that he makes intermediate throws on a more consistent basis. I think that in short yardage, I'd rather have Carson Beck. If you're telling me, hey, someone go throw a deep ball, I'm picking Quinn Ewers over probably everybody in college football. But I'm not picking him over Carson Beck to throw intermediate routes. Playing the position, at an elite level within 20 yards is something that I think Carson Beck does probably better than anybody in the country. And so I agree with having him at the top, working through this. When I keep seeing Carson Beck on these lists, I'm like, is he really number one? And I look through it, and he is better than these other guys. Because Penix is gone, and Williams is gone, and Jane Daniels are gone, Stroud, all these guys are gone the last couple of years. And now it's his turn. And that's kind of how it works in college football anyway, where there's turnover and there's new guys around. But you look around at the other guys this time, and Beck's up there. Shedeur Sanders. You look at the NFL talent first. Shedeur Sanders, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers. Those are my preferred three quarterbacks. I think those are the three best quarterbacks in college football over guys like Jackson Dart and Cam Rising, Noah Fafita, Jalen Milroe, people in that next tier. Carson Beck's the leader of the pack this time. And I think that my purpose for making this was almost just being a little bit shocked that this is actually happening, right? Georgia's entering college football with the best quarterback in the country for the first time in maybe, ever? I mean, Stafford, I guess. But in terms of just a college quarterback that's going to have the production to back it up, we're entering new territory for Georgia.